Hi, I'm Sky High Phoenix, a game developer and student at the University of Portsmouth, studying for a specialism in game design, and this is yet another entry into my development log. This time we're looking at the global game jam that I was a part of with the team that I would have for Game Jam 4. Essentially, this was the icebreaker for the final assessment for the game development module. So, again, starting as always with the brief. I mean, we gotta tell you what you're supposed to be looking at this point. The theme for the Global Game Jam was bubbles. We had about 100 hours from when we found that out to the point when we had to have it in. The team was nominally 8 people, and again, like with the Game Jam 3 situation, we had an expo at the point of the deadline and hand-in. With the ideation process, we have to be rapid this time. You've got 100 hours, so you've got to come up with an idea and quick. This is what we had. It is essentially just a sumo arena for the second part of it, with a sort of rhythm-esque game at the start. It is very much a situation where, okay, go from the title screen to the rhythm game, which will your performance in that will dictate some of the attributes you will get, and then you go to a shop based on some sort of selection criteria. The players will be ordered, and they will get to pick one power-up each. Now, warning, not all the power-ups are good. And then you fight it out in the arena until there's one bubble left, and they're the winner. We decided also very early on that we would go for a controller-based input system, different to what we've done previously, including the coders and us designers. But in this case, it made more sense. If we want to do the sumo, we want that analog movement rather than the very cardinal WASD. A couple more images from the pencil and paper that we have, or that I made, and it's just showing, okay, this is what we were thinking in terms of you have a rhythm-esque thing where, okay, you've got falling soap and you've got a bubble indicator at the bottom saying how large is the bubble that you have got. We also had a look at how do we want to lay it out, because as you can see here on the near side, it is very much, okay, bubbles to one side with the rhythm on one area, and then on the further side, you'll see that we have it layered vertically. In this case, for this project, I was pretty much exclusively a designer, unlike on previous projects. And we've got some of the notes that I have. Admittedly, because of the time and pacing, a lot of what we had as designers, or in this case designer, because I did have a couple of other designers pop in and help, but they weren't there for the entire week. But a lot of what we had was done verbally and on Discord, but these are the notes I do have. For example, all the modifiers that we have in the game, and some of the ones that we cut as well, and a little bit about what they do. For example, your spike ball, add extra damage. Let's have a look. Your double layers absorb 1 hit per size, and then some of the negative ones as well. For example, thinner bubble, less HP per bubble size. Now, this was sort of trying to get the balance between, okay, you've got some which are just flat increases, some which are one-offs, some which are, okay, a bigger bonus, for example, the +1 size in there. And then there are a couple negatives, so that there is a reason to just try and go for first place, despite what you may always want in terms of bubble size during the rhythm game. As you can see, there are the rhythm game criteria at the top of that page that we have. So we have biggest bubble, so just what you'd normally go for if there wasn't a situation where you're aiming for something specific. Then we also have one which is smallest bubble, because remember, whoever meets this criteria the best gets first pick in the modifier shop, and once something is taken in that shop, it is gone. Then, of course, we also decided to have an accuracy bar, so that, okay, if you hit the soaps on the rhythm, it is better. Well, I say rhythm, but when they're at the level. And then there is a lowest accuracy, so can you get as many hits as you want to increase the bubble size whilst also doing it as far away from that bar as possible. And then couple more diagrams over on the far side, mainly looking at the bubble in terms of, okay, you've got a round object or a round avatar. How do you tell the player where they're going to be facing? Particularly if you want the bubble to only attack from a certain direction. Ultimately, this was a design decision we made that having 360 attack areas is going to be difficult to implement, at least in terms of balance, because then every collision deals damage whilst also taking damage. The way that we've done it here, you have a very clear attack zone and a very clear defensive zone. Namely, there's a thicker bit of the bubble which ends up being a different colour, that is your attack zone, and then everywhere else, if you get hit there with someone else's attack, you take damage. Then you'll also notice some size charts. The idea is, the larger your size, the more lives you have in essence. And there were some rough calculations about the scaling that we might want to do, and then some basic information about possible speeds and health. Then we get to some of the other stuff. For example, again, speeds and a couple of other statistics about the bubbles that we have here. So life, health, and total, or lives and the health of that life, and then the cumulative total. That's just trying to figure out how to make the game work so that it's balanced. The bigger your bubble, the less health that layer has. The larger your bubble, so again, more air space to hit you and cause you to lose health, but you do have more lives. Then you'll notice some of the concept art that I've done as well for some of the modifiers, because we need some sort of indicators in the shop to say they're recognizable, that are, oh, here's what it is, it's very clearly this modifier, and ways to distinguish them. Now, admittedly, these were done pretty late on in the 100 hours, and I fortunately had another designer help get some of the other modifiers sorted out with concept art, but these are the ones I've done, and ultimately these were sent off to the artists, still with enough time, fortunately, that they could get the final assets sorted. Otherwise, on the design front, you have to put the game together as well. So, as you'll notice, there are some design tests, the three in, the two closest to me and then the one on the top otherwise. They are mainly scale tests, so trying to figure out, okay, we're in the engine, we've got the arena, what size does it make sense to have the bubbles? They both works with the collisions, they're clear and distinct enough from each other, and they also are sort of not getting too small, not getting too big. So, you've got the line, okay, they fit the arena still, and then you've also got the stack saying, yeah, that's clearly different sizes there. And then, of course, if you go to a 4-player game, because the game we had can be played between 2 and 4 players, that's what a hypothetical match might look like in the top corner. Okay, you've got a couple large players and then a couple small players there at this point. Additionally, as a designer, building that scene in the bottom right, yeah, I had to put all the assets together to make that thing. Trying to get the scale of the different rings was definitely interesting, considering they weren't all universally the same aspect ratio in the initial file commit from the artist, because there was a couple that had to be recolored and that were just done with hue shifts. Now, admittedly, you don't see that here because this is an earlier image where the rings are still just 2 colors. In the end, there were 4 colors. But you can also see, for example, the little rhythm aspect of it and that bar of soap there, where that is your line where you're trying to hit it. Otherwise, some other points that are probably worth mentioning. Source control for this project, I was back on GitHub. I nearly crashed the source control this time. Yeah, this is why you coders don't let designers mess with the source control. Fortunately, it was just a conflict that I had merged the wrong way. So, quick rollback, merge it the correct way, and the game still worked in the end. And otherwise, relatively simple, and just push what we had. But that was mostly for coders. It's just I had a couple of hiccups with it this time. They'll definitely make sure you consult with the people who know what the changes are meant to be before you make them. Again, it's why you never let the intern push to the live build. Then we have the people skills aspect of this. Now, this project was very different to the previous projects. Namely, we had a couple of team members working hybrid because they weren't yet back at university. But we also did a sort of studio setup where we just camped in one of the university labs between, I think we said 9:30 and then 4:30ish to 5ish was when we finished up. So we had lunch breaks and sort, but we just went office hours on this thing. We ran a mini studio, we got a game out, and that actually worked. So we had access to each other all the time. Now, admittedly, I took on a bit of a project manager role for this one. We didn't have a producer, so the sort of idea of the workflows and everything, ultimately I ended up taking that on slightly. And also the sort of responsibility to make sure that the coders don't run till 2 a.m. in the morning just working on the game jam because they feel like it, and they actually do get some sleep. Yes, keeping the team healthy. Somehow managed to do it despite the coders' best efforts. Again, for communication, we're mainly on Discord, this time a server, and as you can see, we actually decided to set it up a bit better this time, namely art progress, code progress, design progress, and then the general chat, where it's more overall team information. This ended up working. I'm surprised I hadn't thought of this earlier, but when this was implemented, it really helped keep the workflow going, particularly because we had a lot of processes ongoing at the same time, so the artists were doing one thing that they needed to check with coders, and then the coders were checking stuff with design. Just segregating it like this helped a lot on the communication, and honestly I wish I'd had this in my previous project at this point. But ultimately, we didn't get to the full 8 team members. Now, admittedly, part of that is due to some extenuating circumstances for a couple team members, but we got to a situation where we had, I think it was 5 people that were in just working on this project for pretty much the whole 100 hours. So we actually ended up having quite a good team. The team clicked, which was always going to be a nice bonus because this is the team for the final assessment for this module. And it really just was a lot of the situation where, because we were in the studio and we could talk to each other, it just worked. This is sort of the quality of communication that we would normally aim for, except it actually happened. Now, of course, the hand-in. This thing, like, you can see some of the more art from the images there, as well as some of the stuff that you've seen earlier during the design section. The artist knocked it out of the park on this one, I have to say. And quite frankly, to go from some admittedly very vague design prompts to this kind of quality, these are the kinds of artists that you hope to work with all the time. Now, you'll also notice that I've got a couple of things here. Firstly, a couple slides here, and then a couple more on the far side that are currently covering up some information about student numbers and sort. Or not student numbers, but student information. But these are a couple things that, as designers, we sort of threw together as a little cheat sheet / how to play guide. There's some more of it that isn't shown here on screen that accompanied the executable for the game. Admittedly, this was one of the big bits of feedback that we got with our Expo show, which was, the game's fun, just it's unclear what you're meant to do. Now, admittedly, that's partially a symptom of the fact that we were very limited for time and we didn't have a chance to go into the build and provide a tutorial element to it. But, so essentially we had this guide saying, this is how you play the game, and we just had it as a slideshow that is with the game, so that in case you need it, can watch. It's essentially like one of the old companion guides that you would get with console games back in the day, in the earlier generations. And then, of course, because they weren't labelled, whilst they were labelled, they weren't labelled too well, so a bit more information about each of the modifiers on some of the later slides that are shown on the far side. Again, the expo went actually pretty well compared to what I was expecting, because it very much was a we're so gone, we're so back situation that happened over the Thursday and the Friday. In the end, we seem to be one of the games that gathered the most more attraction from the crowd. I have to say it's a nice thing, but again, there's some other elements that might have played into that. Hopefully I can cut some in here. that have factored into why we probably got some attention. Again, this is a situation where we actually had a successful hand in. We got what we wanted, and we got it in on time. I'd say that's a pretty successful situation. Still, there are things that can be learned from this. Namely, things can actually be made in a short time frame. 100 hours is not a long time, and yet we got a pretty damn good game. Yes, it could be better. Yes, there's a lot that can be refined, but we got something in, and it was pretty nice. The flip side of this is the crunch experience. Yeah, we were crunching towards the end of that 100 hours. It's unsurprising considering what we wanted to do, but it also says why you need some level of project management and production side, because that crunch is unsustainable, and we now know what it's like, so we can know how to try and know the symptoms of it when we need to try and avoid it. For me personally, there was also some stuff about managing a team, because, again, sort of kind of took on a quasi-producer role on top of my design work. But a lot of that was mainly just, okay, check in with people a couple times a day, make sure that progress is going, know what needs to be sent to where, and know if someone asks a question of, okay, where's this stuff, how do I need to hook in? Just have that information on hand. Admittedly, it was a small enough team that I felt comfortable doing it, but still there's a couple points of, okay, these are the idiosyncrasies of different members of the team. This is how you deal with it. Namely, coders not liking to be disrupted when they're thinking about something completely different, and rather not liking the sun and wanting a shorter lunch break and saying no to that. But then again, there's also some stuff about the responsibility of a designer. This is the first project where I'd say I was truly just a designer first, without the need to consider, okay, I need to do this on top of it, this to do on top of it. Yes, I had some of the project management in it, but the sort of design stuff here is make sure you have documentation, even if it's simple, even if it's short, just have something there, something where people can quickly refer to, so they don't need to always come back to some of the previous messages in the group, or just come ask the question again. Making sure there's that formalized documentation, that's definitely something, but also going in, making sure that everything's built, actually starting to balance some things as well, that kind of experience, getting some practice under the belt, sort of learning some of the tricks to avoid the difficulties, that's useful. But then also, the satisfaction of seeing people play your game. I mentioned it a bit at the end of Game Jam 3, but with the expo and seeing that idea of people are playing your game, definitely feeds back into the motivation. This ratcheted it up a lot compared to Game Jam 3, and it very much was a situation of, no, this is what it is, this is why you do it, this is the result that motivation gets you, and really just playing off that. A nice situation to end on as well, just that positive note of, we did it, we got a game out. Yeah, it's nowhere near as good as some of the stuff that some people around the globe will have done, but for a bunch of university students in first year who had only just really got into a project team with each other, to pump out what we did in 100 hours, pretty good. A success. Hopefully some good foreshadowing for the final assignment for this module, and I'll see you there.